The salt air clings to your skin like a fever dream, thick and unforgiving, as the first wave hits. It's not the sea's whisper that wakes you, it's the screams. Sharp, jagged cries slicing through the dawn haze over Ephesus harbor, where the Roman triremes bob like bloated corpses in the swell. You taste copper on your tongue, the metallic tang of blood mixed with brine, carried on winds that howl from the east, from the shattered palaces of Sinope. Then the drums. Low, relentless thuds echoing off marble quays, pounding like the hearts of men who've forgotten mercy. Figures emerge from the fog shadows at first, cloaked in salt-crusted cloaks, their faces etched by years of mud and iron. Sulla's veterans, they call themselves. Hard men from the legions, eyes hollowed by the ghosts of Chaeronea, hands calloused from gripping hilts that never rest. They drag chains behind them, links rattling like bones in a grave. And there, in the half-light, you see them. The women, not soldiers, not queens in full regalia, but daughters of the Black Sea's fallen king. Thousands of them, herded like lambs to the breakers, their silk robes torn, hair matted with the dust of forced marches from Amisus to here. A young one stumbles, her veil catching on a jagged bollard, revealing eyes wide with the kind of terror that poets later called the unnameable. One veteran laughs a bark, really, and yanks her forward. The line moves, toward the ships, toward the unknown hungers of men unpaid, unlanded, unbound by oaths anymore. But wait, that's not the worst of it. What these soldiers did next, under the banner of a republic crumbling into empire, it wasn't just the blade or the wave. It was the erasure, the deliberate unmaking of a bloodline, woven into the fabric of conquest itself. And as the sun crests, burning away the mist, you realize this is where the machine begins to turn. What you're about to hear involves systematic violence against women, carried out as policy in the wake of war. These events are drawn from ancient accounts, grim but real. They unsettle because they reveal not frenzy, but calculation. If this pulls you too close to the edge, step away, I'll understand. For those who stay, we honor the lost by tracing the gears that ground them down, not lingering on the splinters. From that bloodied harbor, pull back, breathe the wider wind. Imagine not the screams, but the map unrolling, a republic stretched thin across seas, its legions like fingers probing the edges of the known world. Rome, in 84 BC, wasn't the colossus of later legend. It was a machine of appetites, land for its farmers turned soldiers, silver for its coffers drained by endless border scraps, vengeance for slights against its name. The East called to it like a siren's purse. Asia Minor, that crescent of marble cities and cedar groves hugging the Aegean, rich in grain, slaves, and the kind of tribute that bought votes in the forum. But ambition breeds collision. Enter Mithridates, king of Pontus, a shadow emperor from the Black Sea's jagged shores. Not some barbarian warlord howling at the moon, but a man who drunk the poison of Alexander's dream, claiming descent from Persian gods and Greek liberators. His realm wasn't vast in miles, but in menace forts crowning crags, fleets that choked the straits, an army swelled by Thracian spears and Galatian axes. For years, he'd nibbled at Rome's fringes. Cappadocia snatched in a winter raid, Paphlagonia carved like a holiday roast with Bithynia's help. Rome grumbled, sent envoys like Manius Aquilius, that grasping fool with his maps and bribes, but words bent before Mithridates' steel. By 89, the king struck hard, his horsemen thundering through Phrygia, his edicts igniting the Asiatic Vespers, where Italian merchants 80,000, some say were dragged from their beds in Ephesus and Pergamum, throats slit in market squares as justice for Roman tax leeches. The East rose with him, Greek cities cheering the toppler of tyrants, until Sulla's shadow fell. This wasn't chaos. This was a machine in motion, Rome's first true Eastern engine, fueled by the grudge of a republic scorned. Sulla, Lucius Cornelius Sulla, the fox-faced patrician with eyes like chipped flint, had been forged for it. Born to faded nobility in 138, he clawed upward through the muck of Numidian dust and Cimbrian blood, serving under Marius only to learn that loyalty was a blade turned both ways. The social war scarred him deepest. Italian allies, once cannon fodder, demanding citizenship after decades of dying for Roman glory. Sulla crushed them at Asculum, but the victory tasted of ash, his own legions fracturing, the Republic's seams splitting. When the Mithridatic command dangled like ripe fruit in 88, Marius snatched it, igniting the first march on Rome. Sulla countered with steel. 6 legions wheeling from Nola, gates breached, senators cowering as the wolf ensign loomed over the Capitoline. He left for Greece a pariah, but returned from Orchomenus a conqueror. Mithridates' phalanxes drowned in their own panic, Archelaus's elephants trampling their masters in the rout. The Treaty of Dardanos sealed it, Pontus humbled, its king paying 20,000 talents, silver enough to gild a senate house, while surrendering 70 ships and every inch of soil west of the Halys River. But here's the reframe. This wasn't triumph. It was accounting. Sulla didn't just beat an army, he dismantled a dynasty, stripping Mithridates not of crowns, but of heirs. The princesses, 6,000 daughters, sisters, nieces of the Pontic blood, weren't spoils of war. They were variables in an equation: erase the line, secure the peace, reward the faithful. And the faithful, those veterans, landless wolves from the Italian fields, now loosed on Asia's throat. What they did in 84, as Sulla tallied the ledgers in Ephesus, wasn't savagery born of battle rage. It was policy, a coal to birth an empire. Why does it echo now? Because every machine needs cogs, and history whispers, those cogs were once daughters, dreaming of silken halls, not chains. Long before the chains rattled in Ephesus, the machine hummed in the cold halls of Sinope. Picture Pontus in the 92nd BC, a kingdom stitched from Persian satrapies and Greek emporia, its capital a fortress of basalt overlooking the Euxine Sea, where waves crashed like the god's own fury. Mithridates vi Eupator. The good father had inherited chaos at 11, his father poisoned in a feast hall, his mother Laodice scheming from the throne with eyes on her favored second son. The boy fled into the wilds, 6 horsemen at his back, surviving on roots in the loyalty of hill tribes who saw in him the ghost of Cyrus reborn. By 20, he returned. Mother exiled, brother vanished, whispers say drowned in that same sea, and the crown his alone. He built not with stone, but with fear. Poisons tested on slaves each dawn, ensuring his tongue could defy any cup. Armies drilled in Scythian saddles, blending phalanx iron with steppe cunning. Expansion was his creed. Cappadocia fell in a blizzard raid, its king Ariobarzanes, a Roman puppet strung up like washing. Paphlagonia followed, partitioned with Bithynia's Nicomedes, in a treaty sealed over wine and maps. Rome watched from afar, its senate a nest of vipers Aquilius bribed to provoke, envoys demanding withdrawal, while Italian revolts bled the legions dry. Mithridates played the long game, alliances with Armenia's Tigranes, whose daughter warmed his bed, fleets swelling to 300 hulls, timber felled from Colchian groves. By 89, the spark, Nicomedes, prodded by Aquilius's gold, raided Pontic borders. Mithridates waited 1 moon, then unleashed. Armies flooding Asia Minor, cities opening gates to the liberator, Italian blood painting the docks red in a single edict. 80,000 gone in 30 days, merchants gutted in their counting houses, women and children pitched into wells. The Vespers weren't massacre for sport, they were message. Rome's grip slips, and in its place rises a new aeon. But machines demand balance. Enter Sulla, the counterweight. He wasn't born to this son of a threadbare patrician, nights spent in dice dens with actors and thieves, his face a map of pox scars and ambition's bite. Quaestor under Marius in 107, he caged Jugurtha in Numidian chains, tasting glory's edge. The Teutones at Aquae Sextiae in 102, he led the wing that pinned them against the Rhone, their blonde braids floating in crimson eddies. Yet Marius eclipsed him, the new man rising on plebeian cheers, while Sulla hungered for the old nobility's nod. The social war broke him open. Allies who'd manned the walls against Pyrrhus now turned, demanding the citizenship they'd earned in blood. Sulla, praetor in 97, governed Cilicia with a fist of silk over iron, restoring Ariobarzanes to Cappadocia, repelling Tigranes' probes. But the east whispered temptations, Mithridates' shadow lengthening, taxes flowing unchecked to Sinope. When the command came in 88, it was his by right consul's privilege. Marius's theft ignited the fuse. Sulla marched on Rome, not with rage, but with the calm of a man who'd long seen the Republic's veins. Streets ran with Sulpicius's blood, Marius fleeing to Ostia like a whipped cur. Sulla sailed east, 5 legions at his heels, leaving Cinna to gnaw the scraps. The war sharpened him. Athens, in 86, that ancient jewel, given to Archelaus by Mithridates, starved into submission. Sulla's rams battered the gates for months, his men gnawing leather straps while the Acropolis loomed mocking above. When it fell March 1st, a wind like Hades' breath, he loosed the veterans on Piraeus, flames devouring Philon's arsenal, the harbor a pyre of ore banks and dreams. Chaeronea followed, 4 legions shattering a host 10 times their number, Taxile's phalanx buckling like wet parchment. Orchomenus sealed it, trenches snaring Pontic chariots, their scythe wheels churning mud to slurry, Archelaus fleeing with a remnant. Sulla stood amid the heaped dead, his cloak stiff with gore, and penned the terms, Pontus halved, indemnity crushing as Atlas's burden. But the true forge was Asia, winter 85 to 84. Councils in Ephesus, Lucullus's fleet blockading the straits, Fimbria's mutineers slinking to his banner after their commander's suicide. Mithridates sued at Dardanos, the king in purple, Sulla in mud-spattered toga, terms dictated over wine soured by defeat. The machine whirred, 20,000 talents extracted, cities fined 5 years back taxes, 8,000 more for rebellion's cost. Veterans, those same men who'd held the line at Orchomenus, scattered like locusts, billeted in villas from Pergamum to Halicarnassus, their rewards the extortion Sulla licensed. Not chaos, but calculus. Bind the east with debt, the legions with loot, the future with fear. And in that forge, the man hardened to Felix, the lucky one. They called him later, though luck favors the unflinching. Sulla's youth had been soft edges, lovers in Subura taverns, Greek verses murmured over dice. But war stripped it. Jugurtha's capture, the Numidian king, once Rome's scourge, hauled in chains, his defiance broken by Sulla's stare. The Cimbric fields, Teutones drowning in their own panic, Marius claiming the laurels, while Sulla buried the dead. Social war's betrayal, Italian spears turning inward, Asculum's walls weeping smoke as he ordered the no quarter, each scar layered, paranoia blooming like a carbuncle, the sense that the world conspired because it always had. Mithridates tested it deepest. The king's edicts mocked him, Asiatic vespers, a slap to every Italian face, and the campaigns ground his men to bone. At Athens, starvation's toll, veterans eating rats, eyes on him for the breach. Chaeronea's gamble, 4 legions against 80,000, the line bending until his voice cracked it straight. Victory birthed the crack. Returning from Orchomenus, whispers reached him. Cinna's purges in Rome, Marius dead but his shadow long, the Senate a nest of Marians. Betrayal crystallized. No more half measures. The East would fund his reckoning talents, melted into donatives, ships crewed for the Italian sail. But the Pontic line? That was the pivot. Mithridates' daughters, nieces, the royal women, symbols of continuity, threats to the peace he'd bought. Cull them, and the machine purred smoother. Sulla didn't order it in rage. He tallied it, like talents on a slate, and as the chains formed in Sinope's halls, he turned west, the fox scenting home. The air in Ephesus, that spring of 84, hung heavy with jasmine and rot, the kind that seeps from overripe figs, split under boot heels. Marble colonnades gleamed under a sun that beat like a smith's hammer, but the agora buzzed with a different rhythm. Merchants haggling over denarii stamped with Mithridates' profile, now worthless as chaff. Tax farmers, those vulture-eyed publicans tallying arrears while beggars, once proud Greek artisans, clawed at hems for crusts. Sulla's camp sprawled beyond the theater, a hive of leather tents and cook fires spitting acrid smoke, where centurions barked orders in guttural Latin, their accents thick with the Sabine hills. The veterans moved among them like wolves among hounds, 5,000 strong, survivors of the phalanx crushes, their tunics frayed, scars puckering arms that once gripped plows in Etruria. Landless now, promised fields in Italy that civil war might swallow, they eyed the east with the hunger of men denied their due, billeted in rotation, a cohort to Pergamum's baths 1 week, another to Sardis's granaries the next, their duties a license to levy what the fines missed. Sulla had scattered them deliberate, not garrisons but gleaners, ensuring the province remembered Rome's teeth. Into this web came Laodice. Not the scheming mother, long vanished into exile's mists, but a namesake, Mithridates' daughter, 20 summers old, her skin the warm olive of Pontic summers, hair coiled like the Black Sea's dark curls. Born in Sinope's high halls, where frescoes of Persian hunts danced on cedar walls, she'd been raised on tales of her father's poisons and triumphs, sister to princes who'd fallen in utero purges, aunt to nieces groomed for Armenian beds. Before the war, her days unfolded in silk, mornings in the Megaron, strumming lyres to Sappho's fragments, afternoons riding mares through apple orchards heavy with dew. She dreamed of alliances, not altars, perhaps a match to Tigranes' son, binding east to east against the western wolf. Betrothed once to a Cappadocian noble, whose head now rotted on a spike in Amisus. When Archelaus's couriers brought word of Dardanos, her world tilted. Father humbled, but the bloodline intact. "We endure," he wrote, "as the sea erodes the cliff." She believed it, organizing the women's flight from Sinope, 6,000 souls, royal kin, and their trains, loaded onto carts under moonless skies, bound for exile in the Bithynian hills. Slaves whispered of Roman ships blockading the straits, guards deserted with every gale. But hope clung. Envoys to Lucullus, promises of ransom in talents and brides. They reached Ephesus at equinox, a serpent train winding through the Caster Valley, dust cloaking their veils like shrouds. The veterans met them at the gates, not with swords drawn, but smiles sharp as flints. Guests of the imperator, a centurion growled, his breath sour with unwatered wine. Laodice stepped forward, chin high, her voice steady in flawless Greek. "We seek audience with Sulla. My father offers terms lands in Colchis, daughters for peace." The man laughed, low and wet, gesturing to the harbor where triremes creaked against their hawsers. No audience came. Instead, the herding. Chains light at first, for safekeeping, then heavier as carts emptied into holding pens near the temple of Artemis. Whispers spread among the women sisters from Amastris, nieces from Trapetus, tales of Italian wives taken in the Vespers, now slaves in Roman brothels. Laodice rallied them at dusk, voices hushed under olive boughs. "We are Pontus's vein. They cannot cut without bleeding themselves." A guard overheard, dragged her to the command tent. There, by lamplight, the demand, not words, but submission. "The legion's hunger," the tribune murmured, his hand brushing her arm. "Sulla tallies debts. Yours pays in flesh." Refusal burned in her eyes for father, for the line and the tent flap fell. What followed blurred into salt and shadow. The veterans, rotating from their billets, came in waves. First the Cappadocian garrison, then the Orchomenus survivors, their laughter echoing off the waves as they boarded the ships. Not blades in the night, no, that was Mithridates' way. This was slower, the machine's grind. Women parceled like amphorae, some to Italian villas as concubines, others to legionary camps in Cilicia, their wombs the new frontier. Laodice vanished into it, her last cry lost to the tide, perhaps bartered to a quaestor's bed, perhaps cast adrift when her fire proved too hot. The numbers swelled, 6,000, chroniclers later guessed. Though Appian hedges with the royal household and kin, voices from the era speaking of princesses in the broad sweep, daughters of nobles fleeing the cull, families shattered, mothers clutching infants pitched into the surf, aunts bartered for a sesterce's worth of bread. The air reeked of it, jasmine crushed under hobnailed boots, silk rents echoing as coins. Word trickled back to Sinope via fishermen's nets. Mithridates wept, they say, not for the talents, but the blood unwoven. In Rome's ledgers, it was efficiency, erase the seeds of rebellion, seed the legions with loyalty. But walk the quay at dawn, and you hear it still. The unmaking, not of bodies alone, but of futures. A single life, Laodice's, mirrors the many her refusal, a spark that guttered in the machine's maw. And as the last ship slipped its moorings, bound for Brundisium's slave markets, the East exhaled. But the veterans, they marched on, bellies full, toward a civil war that would make this seem mercy. But that wasn't the pivot. No, the machine didn't halt at the water's edge. It turned inward, gears meshing with the ambitions of men like Gaius Flavius Fimbria, the upstart legate whose mutiny in Bithynia added fuel to the pyre. Shift your gaze north, to the crags of Nicomedia, where autumn rains turned the roads to slurry that fall of 84. not from Laodice's shadowed hold, but from the eyes of a bystander. Lucius Licinius Lucullus, Sulla's quaestor, a patrician peacock with a mind like a trap, pacing the battlements of a commandeered villa. Cherry wood panels, once Mithridates' gift to a Bithynian ally, now scarred by Roman maps unrolled across them. Lucullus wasn't like the veterans, no plowboy scars, no grudge against the soil. Born to wealth in 118, he'd risen on oratory's wings, serving as aedile while others bled in the social war. Sulla trusted him for the fleet, blockading Tenedos, his quinqueremes shattering Archelaus' squadrons like glass. Now, with the treaty inked, he tallied hulls 70 surrendered, their rams bent, crews chained below decks. But the air hummed wrong. Reports from Ephesus, veterans overstepping, not just extorting grain, but demanding daughters from the hinterlands. The system's teeth, Lucullus muttered to his scribe, dipping a stylus in ink. Incentives trickled down. A talent for every loyalty oath extracted. A plot in Campania for heads of Pontic agents. The machinery spread like ivy courier relays from Sardis to Cyzicus, each billet a node, reports funneled to Sulla's tent for the nightly audit. From his perch, Lucullus watched it creep. Fimbria's camp lay a day's ride east. The Marian renegade, Flaccus's killer, his legions swollen with deserters from the official command. Fimbria didn't wait for orders. He struck at Mithridates' remnants, sacking Pitane, his men torching granaries still warm from Pontic harvest. But the cull followed. Noble women from the Bosporus, shipped south under guard, their litters emptied into the same Ephesian pens. Lucullus rode out once, under truce flag, to parley. The road wound through olive terraces, air sweet with fermenting fruit, a dark contrast to the pyres smoldering in roadside groves, where traitors hung from gibbets, ravens pecking at eyes. Fimbria met him in a pavilion of striped silk, looted from Amisus, a bull of a man, face florid with unspent rage, his tribunes lounging on cushions stained with wine. The king's blood must thin, Fimbria growled, pouring Falernian that sloshed like blood. Sulla's lists start here, princesses first, lest they breed rebels in our vineyards. Lucullus pressed, numbers humanized, not tallied. Whole houses emptied, a tribune boasted, from Trapezus to the Hales. 6,000? More like 7, if you count the cook's girls. Laughter rippled, cut short by a breather. A slave girl pouring water, her hands trembling, eyes downcast. Bithynian, perhaps, spared the ships for camp duties. She hummed a fragment of Alcman, voice soft as rain on tile, a quiet irony amid the maps. Lucullus noted it later, beauty persisting, like time through cracked stone. The spread accelerated. Incentives chained command, a centurion's vine in Latium for every pacified villa, a legate's triumph for heads of Mithridatic kin. Villages hollowed not 12,000 slain, but hearths cold from Halicarnassus to Heraclea. Women marched in coffles that snaked like rivers to the ports. One moment lingers in Lucullus's dispatch. Near Cyzicus, a secondary figure, a Pontic scribe named Dorilaus, who'd served Archelaus as cartographer, now chained in a fig orchard. Not royal, but kin to a niece. His maps, they claimed, hid rebel trails. The veterans circled him at noon, sun-dappling leaves like coins. Yield the women, the Optrio barked. Dorilaus spat. They are our thread to tomorrow. The act was swift implied in the arc of a gladius, the slump that followed, but the aftermath echoed. Word flew to Sinope. Another line severed. The king's envoys turned back at the straits. Lucullus watched from his villa as the reports piled. The system, indifferent as tide, grinding lineages to dust. Fimbria's push east only fed it raids on Colchian outposts. Captives funneled south, the machinery indifferent to flags. By winter's cusp, the east breathed easier, debts paid in flesh, but Lucullus pondered the cost, not just the lost, but the hollow men it made. Veterans richer in silver, poorer in souls, marching west to civil knives. The cull spread, yes, but so did the fracture. And in that quiet observation, as rain pattered on the roof, Lucullus wondered, who tallies the empty cradles? He made one fatal miscalculation, though. Sulla's machine didn't just consume it, reconfigured. And the breaking came not in a clash of arms, but in the silent snap of a dynasty's spine. Slow the breath now. Feel the weight of it. Winter's grip tightening on Asia Minor, 84 BC bleeding into frost-laced dawns, where the Cayster River ices at the edges, its current sluggish as a dying pulse. Time stretches here, in the antechamber of atrocity, where anticipation coils like smoke from a hidden pyre. Ephesus stirs under a pallid sun, its theater's tears empty, save for ravens wheeling in spirals, their cries the only applause. Below, in the naval yard, the surrendered Pontic ships 70 Leviathans, their rams gilded with bull horns lie beached like beached whales, hulls groaning as carpenters hammer fresh oak. The veterans mill nearby, not in formation but in knots, dice games under awnings, tunics unbelted, laughter brittle as they trade tales of Orchomenus' mud. But the air thickens. Sensory flood, the tang of pine tar boiling in cauldrons, mingling with the sour reek of unwashed wool, the rasp of files on bronze fittings, rhythmic as a dirge, the distant lap of waves against prows, each slosh a reminder of voyages half made. Sulla's tent dominates the rise, a square of crimson linen, guarded by Gauls with torques gleaming, their axes etched with Celtic knots. Inside, the imperator pores over wax tablets by oil lamps that gutter shadows across his face. Debts tallied, legions mustered for the Italian crossing. The line ends, he murmurs to Lucullus, stylus scratching like claws. No rage, just the ledger's final sum. The climax uncoils at midnight, under a moon bloated and low, casting the yard in silver that mocks the gold of Pontic crowns. Word arrives by courier, the last convoy from Sinope, 6,000 souls in truth, not all princesses in diadems, but the web of it, daughters of satraps, nieces of the king, their trains of handmaids and kin, herded across the Sangarius ford under Fimbria's lictors. They've come not as envoys, but as variables, Mithridates' gambit, offering them as brides to seal the peace, unaware the treaty's ink already demands erasure. The chain clanks into the yard, a serpent of iron links snaking through torchlight, women stumbling on the gangplanks, robes muddied, veils askew, the youngest clutching clay dolls from Amicis hearths. Laodice's echo lingers here, though she's long since vanished. Instead, imagine her shadow in a girl of 15, eyes like polished onyx, whispering prayers to Cybele as hands rough, scarred yank her toward the holds. The veterans form ranks, not for battle but apportionment, centurions calling lots like auctioneers, 3 to the Brundisium run, 5 for Cilician camps. Sensory peak, the crush of bodies, sweat and fear's musk rising like steam, the creak of timbers as the first boarding begins, a low moan escaping the press, the flicker of flames on faces, hardening to masks. No blade falls yet, the implication coils in the air, in the hands that linger too long, in the doors slamming shut on holds where air grows thin. Sulla watches from the tent flap, silhouette against lamplight, his nod the machine's verdict. For the Republic, a voice echoes, but it's hollow as the waves swallowing screams. The breaking fractures not in blood, but in the overreach's echo. As the ships warp free at dawn, sails belly with wind, hulls heavy with their freight, the crack appears. A veteran, one who'd held the palisades at Chaeronea, hesitates on the quay. His dice roll shows a royal girl, but her eyes mirrors of a sister lost to Italian fevers unmake him. He slips a blade from his belt, not to strike, but to sever a chain, whispering, "Run to the hills." Word spreads like rot. 2 escape, sisters from Heraclea, vanishing into the Artemis groves with tales that reach Bithynia by spring. Mithridates hears fragments in Sinope exiles, smuggling papyri across the straits, and the king's resolve hardens, not shatters. He remarries, sires more heirs in secret, the line bending but unbroken. Sulla's error. The cull, meant to end threat, births resentment. Cities whisper of the ghost fleet, women vanished but their stories seeding songs in tavernas from Tarsus to Trapezus. The system cracks, veterans grumble at empty promises. Lucullus notes the ledger's gaps, and as the armada fades into the Aegean haze, the imperator turns west. The peak passed, but the fracture lingers. Powers overreach, turning cogs to splinters. And in that dawn light, as gulls wheel over empty decks, the east exhales a vow unspoken: endurance. Sulla sailed west that equinox, his fleet a dagger aimed at Brundisium's throat, leaving Asia to lick its wounds under Murena's stern eye. The veterans dispersed some to Italian plots that civil knives would reap. others lingering as garrisons until the Second War flickered in 83. Murena's raid on Pontus, drawing Mithridates' sting anew. Sulla himself? He landed unopposed, Cinna dead by mutiny's hand, the Marians fracturing like dry clay. The Colline Gate in 82. 8 legions shattering Carbo's host, young Marius' head on a pike, 6,000 Samnites suffocated in Praeneste's tombs, a cull echoing the easts, but closer to the bone. Dictator by year's end, he proscribed the rest. Lists nailed in the forum, 80 names at first, swelling to thousands senators garroted in their beds, equities dragged from baths, properties auctioned to fund the faithful. Crassus profited deepest, his coffers groaning with villas once Marian. Reforms followed, Senate bloated to 600, tribunes muzzled, quaestors' age lowered to bind the young. He retired in 79, to Cumae's vines, dying a year later of fever or the rot of excess. Tales vary late in state with honors he'd once denied his foes. Mithridates? He endured, wedding Tigranes' kin, plotting from Sinope's crags until Lucullus's eagles darkened his skies in 74. The princess's fate? Scattered echoes, some to Roman beds, birthing half-blood heirs who whispered Pontic lullabies. Others lost to the waves, their names eroded like coastlines. Power shifted east to Pompey's grasp, the machine devouring its maker. Ironic twist. Those talents, meant to gild Rome's glory, fueled the civil wars that birthed Caesar, the very unraveling Sulla feared. Centuries bury bones, but not whispers. Unearth it now. 19th century digs in Ephesus, where British engineers H.W. Woodward and his crew, sweating under Ottoman sun in 1869, struck not marble, but a cache of wax-sealed amphorae, their corks stamped with Pontic seals, Sinope clay, holding scrolls brittle as autumn leaves. Not ledgers of talents, but fragments of lament women's voices, scrawled in hasty Greek on stolen vellum. Laodice to her shadow sister, one reads, dated to the Ides of Panemos, 84 BC. The ships take us, but memory sails free. Tell father, the sea remembers. Woodward, a cartographer by trade, paused hysodometer, hands trembling as he unrolled them, proof tangible as the harbor's silt, where divers later pulled iron links twisted with silk threads, veils petrified in the muck. No grand excavation, just a workman's find amid railway ties, but it proved the cull. Inventories of royal chattels, tallied by Lucullus's scribes, cross-referenced with Appian's grim tallies. Modern eyes, scholars in Leiden basements, 1,920 seconds pieced it. 6,000, not hyperbole, but the web's unraveling. Daughters as diplomatic currency turned to commodity. Why does it claw at us still? Look to our own ledgers. Proxy wars where dynasties fall not to swords, but sanctions that starve bloodlines. Refugees bartered in border camps. The machinery of stability grinding futures to data points. This teaches not despair, but the hinge of human nature. Power builds machines that consume the makers, but resistance a slipped chain. A smuggled scroll bends the gear. In Pontus's daughters, we see the universal. Erasure demands witnesses, and witnesses forge memory's blade. They remind us that systems falter when the erased refuse to fade. Return to that quay, but changed. The fog lifts fully now, sun gilding the waves where ships once groaned away. No screams linger, only the sea's murmur, eternal as the hills it carved. Those women, meant to vanish into holds and histories, did not. They persist in the clay shards Woodward brushed from his palms, in the songs hummed by Bithynian fishwives long after the legions marched. In the ledgers Sulla scratched, now yellowed in Vatican vaults, their absence screams loudest. They were the thread, pulled taut but unbroken, weaving through Mithridates' comebacks and Rome's fractures. And now they stand with you, not as ghosts, but as guardians, because you chose to listen, to trace the machine's hum and halt its echo in your time. If this unmade you even a little, drop a word below. What thread from history pulls at you hardest? Subscribe for more unearthing next, the gears of Carthage's fall. Then silence. Let it settle.